It's a 20th century car with a 21st century name that shaped one of the best German manufacturers for the rest of history. This is the BMW 2002. In order to understand why BMW made the 02 series, we have to understand their situation. And for that we have to jump back to before World War II, where they were a pretty good plane manufacturer as well as a pretty good automaker. I mean, their 328 sports car was immensely successful in motorsport, and it gave the brand some serious credibility. Then World War II started, and they started building jet engines for the Nazis, and anything associated with the Nazis in any way was bombed to smithereens by the Allies. So, when they emerged from the ashes of World War II, they were nearing bankruptcy, and the only thing that saved them was a combination of new investors and the BMW, I said, a bubble car. Yes, the silly, almost three-wheeler bubble car that we all make fun of and put massive engines in is arguably the thing that kept BMW from going bankrupt. So there you go. But keeping out of bankruptcy is only one thing. You gotta make a profit. You gotta make money in the business. So, in order to increase sales, they began designing the new class sedans in 1960. These sedans would ultimately boost sales by over 47% and save the brand. Those sedans also came with a little spin-off section of two doors called the 02 Series 1966. First, it was the 1602, which shared the same M10 four-cylinder as the new series sedans. However, it was different in some critical ways. It was a bit shorter, a little bit lighter, had some good suspension. It was sort of like a 2+2, like a Mustang or a Camaro or a Porsche. But there was a problem. If you wanted a four-seater, mid-sized / compact sedan, well, there was a new car called the Datsun 510 that came along, and it destroyed the 85 horsepower 1602. And BMW, not used to lagging behind in performance, had to do something. And this is when BMW realized that they sold more cars if the engine was bigger, because bigger is always better. At least to the engineers. The executives were a little bit more skeptical. They were unsure that a 2-liter M10 would work. But when the engineers point out the 2-liter version actually matched US emissions better than the 1.6-liter version, it was approved instantly. For once, emission standards actually helped the car get launched. There you go. Now, this is a 2-liter 02 series, so very Germanly it was called the 2002. Probably the 2002, but 2002. And when it launched in 1968, it was praised for its performance. The TI model had twin Solex 40 carburetors delivering 119 horsepower, aka 23 more than that Datsun. Sure, it was heavier, but at 2,300 pounds, it's still ridiculously light. And that meant it was very good handling, and it could accelerate fast. It could out-accelerate an Austin Healey 3000 Mark III, and reached a top speed of 115 miles an hour. And it even went out and won the 1970 Nürburgring 24-hour endurance race. This was a good car. It was so good, it was used by domestic terrorists because of its combination of speed and practicality. I'm getting Vauxhall Lotus Carlton vibes. Yeah, extreme sections of the communist Red Army faction used 2002s to escape their latest robbery, kidnapping, murder, or bombing, and things got so bad that non-terrorist 2002 owners started putting bumper stickers on their cars proclaiming they were not associated with the group in effort not to get pulled over by the police. But it didn't stop sales, and in 1971 BMW improved the TI into the even more TII. Now it had fuel injection, which gave it better reliability and 130 horsepower. The 0 to 60 time of 9.3 seconds was good for the time. It's terrible now, but it was good for the time. But BMW knew there just had to be a way to make this thing faster. There had to be a technology. And that is when they turned to America in 1973 with the new technology of turbocharging. The reason I say they went to America is because BMW actually wasn't the first. That goes to GM with the Corvair Monza and the Oldsmobile Jetfire. But they were the first to actually make it work for more than the drive out of the dealership. The old GMs are horrifically unreliable. This thing actually worked. They lowered the compression ratio, threw on a triple K turbo, making 170 horsepower and 181 torque. It could hit 60 in 7 seconds flat. 7 seconds. That is 2.3 seconds faster than the previous version. That is insane performance. 2.3 seconds faster than 60 is a lifetime. In order to accommodate this performance, the track width was widened and fender flares were added to enclose the wheels. A front air dam was added to improve aerodynamics. And finally, it was capped off with sweet red and blue stripes on an ice white backdrop, with a massive banner on it proclaiming Turbo! Yes! Then they strengthened up the strut bars, and the brakes, and the gearbox just for good measure, so you think this would be an absolutely brilliant handling vehicle. But it wasn't. This car is a brilliant and important car, and I love it. But it had a lot of problems, specifically with the turbocharger. You see, the turbo didn't spool up until 4,000 RPM, and since it had a low compression ratio to deal with that added boost, there was zero power until 4,000 RPM. When you hit that, it really kicked the turbo into gear like a kangaroo kick of power. But that massive dump, that lag, would be a major problem throughout its very short life. It really did not help drivability. Now, why did I say a very short life? Well, it was launched in 1973, and at the same time it was launched, Egypt went to war with Israel again, and lost again. So in an act of revenge on the West that backed Israel, they cut off all of the oil from Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and the rest of the Middle East. That caused the 1973 oil crisis, and launching a sports car that needed a 52% bigger fuel tank to go the same range as the normal one is not great. So only 1,672 were ever produced before production was halted in 1974. It was a great car, and it's arguably an incredibly important car in terms of turbocharging technology, but it didn't last very long. That makes it even more collectible. These things go for 6 figures easily nowadays, but not quite as expensive as these. You see, this German tuning shop called Alpina saw the lag and fuel efficiency problems of the turbo and went to work on their own 2002. They took the naturally aspirated M10 engine and tuned it up to 170 horsepower on the road, and when they took it racing, that was shot up to 200 horsepower. So it has the same power as the turbo, but it has the handling and the smooth power band of the TII. How? Well, they completely rebuilt the cylinder heads and the valves, installed a new camshaft, a new exhaust, and reprogrammed the Bosch fuel injection. It was a brilliant car, and it helped launch Alpina. We will eventually do a video on Alpina, they're ridiculous. But in the meantime, this is what arguably started them. How many of them were made? We don't know. They never stated how many kits were installed on 2002s, but it was a significant contribution to make Alpina's name more widely known. But it didn't matter, because finally in 1975, the 02 series was once and for all replaced with the original E31 3 Series. The 2002 may be dead, but it is arguably the most important BMW ever. It completely rebuilt the brand, both literally and philosophically. The sales success helped save the entire company, while the TI, the TII, and the Turbo sent BMW down a mid-sized performance path they are still on to this day. And it was also the father of the original 3 Series, which would later become the M3, their most famous model. Without the 2002, the BMW we know today wouldn't exist, and it might not have even existed at all.